In this video, I'm going to react to NHL rivals, the New York Rangers and the Philadelphia Flyers. Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. This is the place where I react to music, media, sports, anime, anything related to popular culture. I'll watch it with an open mind and give you my 100% honest reaction to it. And if you could please hit that like button early, I'd really appreciate it. Now, I finally am going to react to this video. It's taken me such a long time. I don't know why, because the first two other NHL rivals videos I've reacted to, I really thoroughly enjoyed them. Just learning about the NHL and the teams that, that make it up, it's just really fascinating, because I think it's important for a new fan to try and learn the history of the sport, because when there's, rivalry games, big derby games, unless you know what has transpired in the past to fuel that rivalry, you're not really gonna get it, are you? It's gonna be kind of like you're just cheering for the sake of it. You're just kind of faking the emotion. Whereas when you understand, whether it's the huge hits that have put a player in hospital, or, the traditions, throwing things onto the ice, certain players you just despise, maybe moving a team to a different location, little things like that kind of make up the history of a team. I think that's when you're a real fan, when you know about stuff like that. So I'm hoping that, by me watching this video, it's gonna help build my base, build my knowledge of the sport, so that when I eventually pick a team to support, I'm a real fan, if you know what I mean. So let's go. This is going to be me reacting to NHL rivals, the New York Rangers versus the Philadelphia Flyers. Let's do it.
Rivalries are the lifeblood of hockey.
The volume level in the building definitely goes up.
I love going into hostile territory.
Rivalry, pure and simple, is hatred.
Save Lindros!
I loved playing the Flyers.
Broad Street versus Broadway.
Battle in center, fight going on. McPhee and Tocchet.
Get the ice back.
Those guys were like rock'em sock'em robots, man.
In the locker room.
Wolf and Jade Schultz for the main event here. And Bill Wells getting the worst of this.
You can definitely feel when the Rangers come to town.
When you went into MSG, it was a tough atmosphere.
Oh, man.
Rangers Flyers gives me goosebumps right now.
Let's go.
There is Broad Street and there is Broadway. Philadelphia and New York. Two cities, two worlds apart, especially when the blue shirts face off against the black and orange.
And we're underway. The Flyers in white, the Rangers in blue.
Born in 1926, the Rangers are part of the NHL's heritage, a cornerstone franchise in the heart of the Big Apple.
Wow, 1926, so that's almost 100 years old. It's a good age.
There come the New York Rangers.
The Flyers were part of the league's major expansion in 1967, when 6 teams became 12. By their 5th season, the Flyers were in search of a new head coach. They settled on Fred Shero, a former Rangers player who had also coached in the New York farm system.
Fred Shero came to the Flyers very traditional. He didn't want any mustaches. He didn't want any long hair. He winds up with a mustache himself, and he gloried in their long hair.
Under Shero's leadership, the Flyers' culture changed, and that meant culture shock for the rest of the NHL. The Broad Street Bullies became the most feared team in hockey. Their home, the Spectrum, a meeting place for intimidation, Philly style.
I can always remember the bus ride from New York to Philly. Everything before the bridge was playing cards, everyone's laughing, there's music, and all of a sudden we could see the Spectrum, and everything became quiet.
So now
Was that Rocky Balboa outside that stadium there? I think it was.
At the Spectrum, and the place is intimidating to begin with. It's dark. The music's aggressively awful. The Flyers are the Flyers.
Aggressively awful.
It was clear the team from New York had a tough time adapting to this new world order of the NHL.
Nobody liked going into Philly, believe me. You felt it. You got marks in the back of your legs, and you got cuts here and there.
Anders Hedberg had this huge red welt on his back. I said, Anders, what's that? He said, we're playing the Flyers.
And that nastiness extended to the Philly faithful, who didn't exactly make the Rangers feel at home in the city of brotherly love.
They were yelling things at me that I didn't realize how a lot of them knew my mother, they knew my sister.
They chased Duguay around trying to beat him up because he had the long hair going. He was typical, I'm sure, of the Flyers' eyes. The big, rich, wealthy, Broadway-bound Rangers against us, kind of street fighters.
And those two worlds collided in the team's first ever playoff meeting. The 1974 NHL semifinal would pit the physicality of Philadelphia up against a talented New York team.
The Rangers were a finesse team with Rattel and Gilbert. They wanted to be gentlemen about beating you. They were about talent, and the Flyers were going to mug you in order to stop you from winning.
And midway through the first period of Game 7, the Flyers enforcer, Dave the...
Man, it looked like fights were a lot more, we used the word rugged back in the day. I mean, there were two refs in between those players. One of the refs was on the floor, kind of like protecting the other guy, you know, and the other guy, he was still like, just wailing on him.
Emmer Schultz added his own brand of physicality against New York's Dale Rolfe.
And here's Schultz and Rolfe. Schultz cut the glove off and landed one on Rolfe before he got set. Rolfe and Dave Schultz, the main event here.
It was almost scary. I thought that this guy might get killed.
They're all alone, and now Schultz has a grip on Rolfe's hair. Schultz still throwing punches, and Dale Rolfe getting the worst of this.
Watching Rolfe get beaten up.
Oh, mate, this guy, I'll give it to him. He can take a punch, man. This guy here got like 5 unanswered hits right on the button, and he's still standing up. Fair play to you, man.
Symbolic of who they weren't.
The Rangers, they should have come to his defense. There's no question about that, and didn't.
That was the presumption that we hung Dale Rolfe out to dry. This is the 7th game. You jump in, you get thrown out of the game, okay? But I did start to go. And Dale looked at me, he said, stay out of it.
The game is over, and the Philadelphia Flyers have defeated the New York Rangers.
The Flyers' victory would propel them to back-to-back Stanley Cups in 1974 and 75. Broad Street had become Title Town. Fred Shero and his team of renegades the toast of Philadelphia. But 3 years later, that glow would wear off, and Shero was ready to move on.
I just feel like I've lost something. I can't seem to generate any enthusiasm for coaching right now.
The Rangers were run then by Sonny Werbler. He wanted the best guy in hockey to coach the club. And he said, well, what do you think about Fred Shero? And I thought, well, Fred Shero's under contract.
But he suddenly handed in his resignation, and they smelled a rat.
On June 2nd, 1978, it became official. Fred Shero was returning to his hockey home.
I always hoped and prayed that someday I would return in some capacity. And to return as a general manager and coach is unbelievable.
I would eventually be his captain, and honestly, I probably talked to him maybe 5 times. He was the mysterious Fred Shero.
But he was no mystery behind the bench, where in his first season with New York, the Rangers would embarrass Shero's former team in the playoffs.
And the New York Rangers have buried the Philadelphia Flyers.
The Flyers ended the decade of the 70s with a whimper. They would come back in the 80s with a bang.
He picked up his stick with 2 hands.
Did he take a shot from Dave Brown?
There was a huge sign at Madison Square Garden, Dave Brown eats bleep.
Dude, he smacked that guy just like that with the stick. That would hurt like hell.
Rangers have just been absolutely marvelous in this playoff series.
Starting in 79, the Flyers and Rangers played 7 times in 9 years, either the first or second round. And that's really when the Ranger-Flyer rivalry really got going.
And in the 1980 Stanley Cup playoffs, the Flyers exacted revenge on Fred Shero and the Rangers, knocking them out in 5 games. By the time the two teams met again in the 1982 postseason, the Rangers had a new brash coach who had helped work a miracle in the 1980 Olympics. His name was Herb Brooks.
I remember him talking about how he wanted the game to be played. He wanted to have the puck. We'll keep the puck. I remember being so fired
So like possession hockey as opposed to like counter-attacking play?
up after my first meeting with Herbie that I couldn't wait to get started.
Brooks and his puck philosophy would lead New York past the Flyers in the '82 Patrick Division semifinal. And it was New York's style of play that drew the ire of Philly coach Bob McCammon, who compared the Rangers to a famous cartoon.
Bob McCammon loved to talk. Bob McCammon was a yapper. When he called the Rangers Smurfs, the Rangers were a small team.
It's Anders, Hedberg, it's Mark.
I love how they're playing this. I think it's the Smurfs background music in the background.
McClanahan. Smaller guys, but unbelievably skilled.
The undersized Rangers finished a whopping 26 points behind the Flyers in the 1982-83 Patrick Division standings. But that didn't stop the Smurfs from standing tall when they faced the Flyers in the playoffs.
Those Smurfs, all of a sudden, those guys grew big time in that playoff series.
Wade Lindbergh, rebound picked up by Hedberg once more. Cruises, lets another one go, he scores!
2 seasons later, the Flyers had a young, brash coach of their own. And led by Mike Keenan, Philly swept the Rangers out of the playoffs. By 1986, an individual rivalry was brewing between two fierce competitors.
George McPhee, not a big man as far as height and weight was concerned, but his heart was as big as his entire body.
There they go. Look at this. Oh, that's a dandy.
And Rick Tocchet, one of the toughest forwards to ever play the game.
Tocchet and McPhee would drop the gloves 3 times in a 1-month span, the last taking place in Game 3 of the 1986 Patrick Division semifinal.
Battle in center, fight going on. McPhee and Tocchet. This is a battle royal here. Holy man, this is a main event.
It was a classic battle, staged at center ice in Madison Square Garden. It was quite an event for that game and for the series.
New York would eventually win the series in 5. The following season, a new...
Man, I know I've said this before, but I mean, to play in the NHL, you've got to be tough, man. And I love it. Proper tough man sport.
Individual rivalry emerged between the blue shirt faithful and the Flyers rookie goaltender, Ron Hextall.
Well, the problem with hating Ron Hextall is his family line goes everywhere. So there's a good chance of somebody in his family played for the team that you're rooting for.
That included the Rangers. It was Hextall's grandfather, Brian, who scored the game-winning goal to help New York win the 1940 Stanley Cup.
Wow.
Their last championship in 47 years, heading into the 1987 Patrick Division semifinal, where the Rangers would face Hextall and the Flyers.
I think the Rangers were probably the team that I hated the most.
Those fans would get all over Ron Hextall in New York, and I think the more they got on him, the better he played.
He's got a man on the wing, Jeff Jackson. Drive, save on the play to Hextall.
Hextall and the Flyers would win the series in 6 games, wrapping up.
I reacted to Ron Hextall a couple of months back. He was intense, a very intense character. I mean, yeah, really passionate dude.
The 7th playoff meeting between the two teams in 9 years.
When it was over, Jay Snyder, the Flyers president, lit up a really big cigar and says, "You always want to win," he says, "but you always want to beat the Rangers just to shut them up."
And the following season, Flyers tough guy Dave Brown tried to shut one of the Rangers up permanently in a vicious display against Tomas Sandstrom at Madison Square Garden.
Dave Brown was the type of player that you paid attention to whenever he was on the ice.
Thomas was a chippy player. He used the stick a lot.
Sandstrom tied up, held by Brown. Sandstrom trying to get loose, hooked away by Hextall, and Sandstrom goes flying into Hextall.
He was a dirty player, and the league didn't do anything about it. So eventually, we got tired of it.
Dave Brown had Tomas lined up. He picked up his stick with 2 hands, and he just put it in Tomas's face.
Sandstrom looks... Oh, man, that's dick. Did he take a shot from Dave Brown? And you wonder, folks, what makes a person tick?
I had the best seat in the house, and I looked up.
Bang!
I was actually pretty happy about that at the time because Sandstrom deserved everything he got.
What a senseless, idiotic play again by Dave Brown.
Dave Brown of the Flyers suspended 15 games.
15 games. Oh my God, that's a good chunk of the season, no?
Hey, looking back on it, I regret it now, hitting Sandstrom. It was an unfortunate incident. I take full responsibility for what happened. I don't hold any grudges against him. I just looked at it like I was doing my job and I was protecting my players.
Sandstrom never bore Brown any bad will. This was one tough sweep.
Still to come, a generational battle takes place. Eric Lindros versus Mark Messier.
Mess was the moose, the bull in the china shop, and who could stop him?
The wrong end of a Lindros hit right here.
Now watch Brown come over and boom! Now you tell me he deserves to play in this league.
Dave Brown's vicious hit on Tomas Sandstrom was the latest on-ice altercation in the nasty history between the Flyers and the Rangers. 5 years later, the two teams would take their battle off the ice for the rights to one player.
The Quebec Nordiques are very proud to select Eric Lindros.
1991, the Quebec Nordiques make Lindros the first player taken overall, but Eric Lindros is not going to Quebec City under pain of death.
Marcel Aubu, the president of the Quebec Nordiques, presented Eric Lindros with a sweater. We will not put the sweater on. He made that perfectly clear to the Quebec Nordiques.
There was a lot of phone calls to the Nordiques during that first year that they had him to say, are you willing to trade him?
1992 here in Montreal has turned into the Eric auction.
So now, at the next draft, Marcel Aubu is trying to make a deal.
Marcel called me in our hotel room and said, we have a deal.
Marcel Aubu is a man who won't take yes for an answer. He works out a trade with the Flyers and the Rangers.
He won't take yes for an answer? Maybe he meant to say no there.
Said, listen, sorry, but I made a deal with the Rangers. And that seemed impossible.
In acquiring Lindros, New York was sending John Van Beesbrook, 3 young prospects, 3 first-round draft picks, and a large sum of money to Quebec. Neil Smith thought he had a deal, but Philadelphia president Jay Snyder thought Lindros was Philly-bound.
Jay Snyder came over to me on the floor and said, don't announce your deal. I said, what deal? He says, your Lindros deal, don't announce it because we're gonna grieve it.
Eric Lindros, was it going to be the Rangers or the Flyers?
10 days after the 1992 entry draft, the fate of Eric Lindros would be decided by an arbitrator, Larry Bertuzzi.
I find that Philadelphia...
Was Lindros really that good? Like, because I'm still learning the game. He must have been really good for, you know, this much to be made, you know, for people to offer so much for him. You know, 5 players and 12 million. Whew.
Made an enforceable deal with Quebec with respect to Lindros, subject to a condition which existed for its benefit.
Philadelphia was sending Peter Forsberg, Ron Hextall, and 4 other players in exchange for the 19-year-old center.
Wow.
Eric Lindros was officially a Flyer.
It's been a long 15 months, and it's happened today. It feels great.
Ranger fans were upset that we didn't get Lindros, but the very next year we won the Cup with Messier, so who cares about Lindros?
Mark Messier and the Rangers were on top of the hockey world, but 90 miles to the south, there was a force to be reckoned with who wore number 88, and New York's number 11 was taking notice.
Mark Messier had been known as Mark the Moose because he was that big and that imposing. Well, Eric Lindros just dwarfed the Hall of Fame player.
Mess was the moose, the bull in the china shop, and who could stop him?
In the 1995 Stanley Cup playoffs, that answer became Lindros and the Flyers.
We had a great player in Eric Lindros. They had a great player in Mark Messier. Our guy was a wrecking ball at that time.
Stripped away from Lindros, but it's center. Here's Lindros.
We lost our first 2 games in overtime.
He's coming in. A pass back. Holler scores. Holler wins it for Philadelphia.
And at the end, you know, they're like, boy, we got swept 4-0.
And the Philadelphia Flyers
They got swept 4-0. Ay, ay, ay. Oh, that can't feel good.
Series
They were the better team.
We're knocked out 4 straight, so that's when the Lindros domination started.
And by the time Messier and the Rangers met Lindros and the Flyers in the 1997 Eastern Conference Final, the Philadelphia captain was at the top of his game.
Eric Lindros had Mark Messier's card tucked away in his wallet. He grew up loving Mark Messier. And when those two guys went at it in the playoffs in '97, you're waiting for just explosions.
Lindros goes back to Messier and says, I'm going to rip that card up I kept for years. And Messier says, I'm going to rip you up.
Mark was used to those type of battles when he was younger with older players, but the reality was Eric Lindros is becoming one of the best players in the league.
Here's a chance. Lindros scores! Unstoppable.
That was the passing of the torch, in my opinion, to Eric Lindros. And that playoff series was a real...
And it's always going to happen. There's always going to be, you know, a young buck coming up that's going to take his spot eventually. That's just how it goes. It's a cycle.
Of two legends really going in different directions.
The end of the '97 series would be the last playoff game of Mark Messier's legendary career. The playoff battles with Eric Lindros were over, but the torch of this rivalry was ready to get passed on.
It is a penalty shot.
Playing that game, there's a lot on the line there.
I saw the hold between his legs. I tried to surprise him.
Briere against Lundqvist.
Over the course of their 6-decade rivalry, the stakes for the Flyers and Rangers peaked in their postseason meetings. But their matchup in Game 82 of the 2009-2010 regular season would become a rivalry classic.
Rangers-Flyers, last game of the season, 2010, winner take all. Winning team goes to the playoffs, losing team goes home.
This great rivalry comes down to another huge game.
You give Henrik Lundqvist the edge in goal because, without question, the Rangers' goaltending was better.
Oh, Henrik Lundqvist doing everything he can to give his team a chance to make the playoffs.
Mate, this guy's like a wall. He's not letting anything in.
We felt that the Rangers were playing to get to a shootout.
Game 82 comes down to a shootout.
By the time it got to a shootout, Henrik Lundqvist was mentally and physically gone.
Danny Briere will shoot first.
The day before, we had watched clips and we had practiced shootouts. When my name was called, it was my turn to go. I was very confident.
Briere picks up the puck and here we go. He scores!
New York's P.A. Parento tied the
lovely finish
shootout at 1 goal apiece, sending it to round 3 and Philly superstar Claude Giroux.
He looked at me just before going and he's like, I don't think I can do the move that I had practiced yesterday. I said, just let it happen.
Giroux pulls up, shoots, scores!
New York's season was on the line, but instead of using Marian Gaborik, the team's leading goal scorer, the Rangers opted for forward Olli Jokinen.
I was surprised that Jokinen ended up taking the shot.
Olli Jokinen must score to keep the Rangers season alive.
I remember Olli Jokinen winding up, doing circles in the far corner, watching him do that and thinking they're doomed. They're doomed.
He picks up speed.
Roaring on it is Jokinen. The deep, the save by Boucher, and the Flyers are going to the playoffs.
I still remember.
What a save. What a save.
Like it was yesterday, you know, the move that Ole made, you know, I saw him score on that move about 6 times that year and just didn't get that one.
The Rangers season is over.
They should have went with the other guy, but hindsight's 20/20, isn't it? You know, it's easy to say that when you know the guy didn't score.
I was in Philadelphia for a baseball broadcast later that summer, and I happened to run into Brian Boucher. And I said, I have to ask you one question. What were you thinking when Olli Jokinen circled all the way back? And he started laughing. He said, I had no idea what he was doing.
Boucher and the Flyers would take their momentum from Game 82 and ride it all the way to the Stanley Cup Final, where Philly's magical run would end at the hands of the Blackhawks. But the Flyers' appearance on the NHL's biggest stage was a prelude to their announcement of hosting the 2012 Winter Classic, where they would face their arch rivals from New York.
The Philadelphia Flyers and the New York Rangers take their long-standing rivalry outdoors.
Claude Giroux would give the Flyers a 2-0 lead. But then an unlikely hero emerged for the Blue Shirts.
Rupp a shot, he scores! Mike Rupp with a Yager-like salute.
Mike Rupp's goal scoring was unexpected, but his celebratory mocking of the Flyers' Jaromir Jagr angered the Philly bench.
Scott Hartnell went up to Mike Rupp at center ice, and he said to him, show some respect. Jaromir Jagr's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, you have a career like Jaromir Jagr, and someone like that mocks a guy, especially on that big of a stage. I didn't like it.
Rupp would score his second goal of the game to even the score at 2. 3 minutes later, Brad Richards gave New York the lead, and it stayed that way until the final frantic minute of the game.
Giroux laid it across, check a shot, fought off by Lundqvist, big scramble there!
It's like a bad dream, almost. You see the goal, you see the puck, you just want to push it in, but you can't.
If they called a penalty shot?
I was really surprised when they called it.
And this is a penalty shot for Danny Briere. Holy smokes.
It's like, holy cow, it was like dead silence in there, and just a pretty thrilling way to do it.
19.6 seconds remaining. Rangers lead by a goal.
Briere against Lundqvist.
There was a lot on the line there. My focus was just to try to be patient and wait for him to make a move.
I saw the hole between his legs. I tried to surprise him.
Moving in on Lundqvist.
Save Lundqvist!
What a finish to this hockey game.
Henrik would not make the first move. That's why they call him the king, I suppose.
The Rangers gather around Henrik Lundqvist to celebrate.
That Winter Classic was fabulous. And Henrik is Henrik. The Rangers win the game. That's what you're supposed to do. Beat the Flyers.
Henrik Lundqvist's game-winning save was just another lasting memory in a long-standing rivalry between two franchises, where Original Six battles expansion era, and fisticuffs reign supreme, where teams battle for one flair, and passion sometimes crosses the line. It's Broadway versus Broad Street, when the Flyers face off against the Rangers as NHL rivals.
Epic. Man, that was awesome. It's so immersive, these videos. Whoever makes them, they do such a great job. And just, starting from the beginning, like, where did the rivalry, where was its inception? And they take you on all the different steps, really, really enjoyed this one. I mean, yeah, if I had to pick a team now, obviously because I'm based in the UK, it would make sense for me to pick the Rangers just because they're the closest, part of the USA to the UK. But there's just so many cool teams in the NHL. It's just a really fascinating little problem that I've got to solve now, just to choose my team. But really, really enjoyed this video. I'm gonna need to find another NHL Rivals video to react to soon because this was epic. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications, and keep throwing the recommendations my way. I know I say it all the time, but they genuinely help me out because if I know you enjoyed watching something, I'll definitely enjoy reacting to it. So like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications, keep throwing the recommendations, and I'll catch you in the next one.